The Supreme Court considers whether to force Americans to celebrate activity they consider sinful. The White House makes its push for big tech censorship, and moderate Republicans consider whether to give Democrats a deal on immigration. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show.
This is one of the chief tools in the fear-mongering cottage industry, is to frame things as if, oh my God, the boogeyman is coming. They're going to force us to celebrate things that we don't like. That is not what the case in front of the Supreme Court is about at all. Creative LLC versus Elenis is a Supreme Court case that will determine if a commercial enterprise can not service a member of the community they find objectionable. So this is about the ability to discriminate on religious grounds in a commercial enterprise. It's not about forcing people to celebrate gay marriages.
The Ben Shapiro Show is sponsored by ExpressVPN. I talk about them every single show. Why haven't you gotten a VPN yet? Get ExpressVPN right now at expressvpn.com/Ben. Well, the Supreme Court is taking up the question of same-sex marriage once again. All of these questions follow hard upon the Supreme Court declaring in the Obergefell case, of course, that same-sex marriage must be elevated to the level of traditional marriage. In fact, marriage must be redefined as not between a man and a woman for the purposes of producing children. Instead, marriage will now be defined as two people of any sex living together under the boundaries of the law, essentially. Monogamous, non-monogamous, doesn't really matter. As long as it is two people of any sex, that is the new definition of marriage, according to Justice Anthony Kennedy in a 5-4 majority.
Dear Lord, how much bullshit can you pack into a couple sentences? I really dislike this entire industry of just lying and building a foundation of whatever lies are going to come after this on top of the lies you already start with. I have to go back sentence by sentence just to deal with each one. He said that they're taking up the topic of gay marriage yet again. That's not what this topic is. The topic is whether a commercial enterprise can deny services based on religious exemptions. And then what did he say? Oh, that marriages are no longer about procreation. Dude, seriously, that is a religious belief, or your personal beliefs. That's not a definition of marriage. And then he said something about whether you're monogamous or not. That, again, is not a definition of marriage. It might be in your personal space. There's no legal definition of the quality of your marriage or the boundaries of your marriage. However, there are state laws about infidelity. I don't know which states have them. And they're also, like in the dissolution of your marriage, there could be adultery, could be a consideration whether it's a legality or not. But Obergefell had fucking nothing to do with your morality about fidelity.
In the Obergefell case, well, this bears a lot of consequences because when you redefine marriage, this now raises questions as to how much are people allowed to act in accordance with their own viewpoints on marriage. Because once the Supreme Court has declared a redefinition of an institution as fundamental as marriage, and once the Supreme Court has also declared that same-sex marriage is on a par with traditional marriage, and thus...
This guy, come on, seriously, Obergefell was about the civil union. It's not about your religious beliefs. It in no way affects or hinders your ability to be a hateful little monster. Those things didn't change. I presume that's where he's headed with this bullshit. It's just how you're not going to be allowed to hate as much as you'd like to.
That anybody who does not believe that is in some sense a bigot. What exactly do you do with people who don't believe that? Which, for nearly all of human history, was nearly all humans. What exactly do you do with all the people who do not go along with the idea that two men or two women being married to one another is the same thing as a man being married?
Really simple answer. You don't do anything because nothing needs to be done. You're allowed to think and believe all the things you want to believe. Does this guy not know what the Obergefell was about? It's about civil unions, that those need to be recognized. It has nothing to do with your personal, religious, moral, blah, blah, blah beliefs. No one's going to say that well, people might say you're a bigot or whatever, or hateful. Yeah, because you are hateful. But that's not the law. There's no law that says you're not allowed to hate. And you'd think a Jew would know that. This guy's a hardcore Jew here, right? Like all of a sudden he's not aware of the fact that people are still allowed to hate Jews as much as they want and say it as much as they want on any grounds that they like. That didn't change. It didn't change with Obergefell.
To a woman. What about religious people? Or what about people who aren't religious, who just believe that, for example, society has more of a stake in men and women being married to one another than it does in two men living together or two women living together, which is obviously and patently true.
There we have it. That's it in a nutshell, isn't it? That's going to be his argument is, honestly, I don't watch this guy. I don't watch any of the guys like him because they just always, you can tell my voice, I just get so irritated so fast. The problem is he's a theocrat, one in a theocratic state. And a guy like this would change the Constitution to make sure that that could happen. The laws are in place for civil reasons and for civil discourse. And this law, Obergefell, is about a civil union. It does not affect your belief systems. It doesn't affect any religion. You can do whatever you want still. But he would love for, this to be a theocracy because his chief concern is he feels like he's losing. Like society doesn't represent the feelings and opinions that he has that he wants. And he wants social norms to reflect his belief system. And he wants to inflict his belief systems on everybody else. And he'll come up with any moral argument that justifies that. In the end, guys like this, they've created these culture wars that they're never going to win, and that's what it's all about. Is he wants the culture that he feels comfortable in. Laws aren't there to enforce cultural norms. You're not going to win this war because the population of Western societies are moving away from your freaking fundamentalist viewpoints. And you're losing. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't institutionalize your morality. That doesn't work. It has never worked anywhere throughout history. You want to talk about the history of mankind. Institutionalizing morality never works. And especially if your morality's fucked up like this guy's is.
What exactly do you do with those people? And this has now raised its head at the level of the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court looks as though it is going to move along the lines of what has been called the Utah Compromise. The Utah Compromise is set out in the state of Utah. Essentially what it does, it creates a very strict non-discrimination law that includes things like sexual orientation. And then it creates massive carve-outs for people of religious faith. So basically what it says is you are not allowed to, quote unquote, discriminate against people who are gay or lesbian. However, if you are a religious person, then we have a big religious carve-out for you, that you are allowed to act in accordance with your religion. That seems to be the compromise the Supreme Court is going to draw.
No, he's missing the point entirely. This is nothing like that carve out in Utah. This is another attempt to chip away at civil liberties. There was that cake case which kind of highlighted, well, yeah, okay, if you're an artist, then as an artist, you don't have to do things for people that you don't like. This one is, okay, well, somebody that works on the internet is actually a publisher. And if you're a publisher, then you don't have to do work for anybody that you don't like. This is just, and after that cake thing too, all kinds of new lawsuits happened, and there's been other similar types of exceptions made by the Supreme Court, and this will be another exception. And we just keep chipping away at what civil rights are. And it's really dangerous, and Ben should be very much aware of this. You're still a Jew, Ben. And you're still asking to allow for hate to grow, and I completely agree that the Supreme Court is not there to institutionalize anybody's morality. This is a slippery slope, and it continues to be a slippery slope, chipping away at civil liberties, and the entire argument is just ridiculous because. If we start thinking that people that do work on the internet are publishers, then we're going to get into that. That is a mess that we've never been able to deal with. Not to mention the fact this case was not brought by anybody. This wasn't brought by somebody that was gay because they were demanding work done. This case was brought by this person who was never asked to do anything for a gay couple. She merely just brought this up on religious grounds in case this thing might happen in the future. And then she's been backed by a dark money group that funnels money into these types of suits to get them all to the Supreme Court while they still can, while they have this massive majority to keep chipping away at civil liberties.
However, is that going to be the long-term compromise that is accepted by the left? Of course not. Of course not. The left will not be happy until you, personally, are celebrating all of the activities they deem to be good and useful. That is the entire purpose of having government elevate same-sex marriage to the level of traditional marriage. After all, the benefits of same-sex marriage had already been granted to same-sex couples under the law nearly everywhere across the country with things like civil unions. So why exactly was there a push to elevate this to the level of marriage? It wasn't for legal purposes, because
This fucking guy, this case was not brought by gay people. It was brought by the fundamentalist woman and backed by a dark money group. Nobody, what he's saying doesn't even make sense. Nobody's asking you to celebrate anything, Ben. Nobody ever has. Nobody will. And it won't be codified into law either. This is just fucking ridiculous. The dude's a fucking idiot.